Hello everyone. We were talking about hepatic disorders, so today we'll be going ahead with it. So we talked about hepatitis A virus. Now we'll be talking about hepatitis B virus, right? HBV, hepatitis B virus. So hepatitis, we were talking about acute viral hepatitis, if you remember. Acute hepatitis is of two types, viral and toxic. So we were talking about toxic. We were talking about viral, of which hepatitis A has been covered in the previous video. Now we'll be doing about hepatitis B. So hepatitis B is, we know that it is sexually transmitted. It is transmitted by blood and blood products, right? So by blood transfusion and all. It is incubation period is 1 to 3 months. Yeah, vertical transmission also. Vertical. Incubation period is 1 to 3 months. Patient becomes infectious. Like, when will the patient start to spread the disease to other people also? So patient becomes infectious 5 to 15 weeks after onset of symptoms. Now, till when is the patient going to be infectious? Till they clear the infection. Right? So if a patient is not treated for life, the patient remains infectious for life. Now, chronic hepatitis. So hepatitis B has a course in which it goes from acute to chronic, right? When patient becomes chronic hepatitis B infected, the patient becomes infectious indefinitely. Now, it occurs in 6 to 10% of adults, like the epidemiology, 90% in infants, because it has the tendency to go towards chronicity more, and 30% in less than 5 years, under 5 years. So this was about it. How is the acute phase of hepatitis B? It is similar to hepatitis A, like nausea, vomiting, malaise, fever, body pain, weakness, right? So whenever such type of patients come to us where hepatitis is suspected, we send all of them, hepatitis A, B, C, E. Okay. Then, what is the treatment for hepatitis B also? If it is in acute phase, then it is just supportive. Now, let's talk about chronic. Whenever it becomes chronic, we have to start with antivirals, right? And antivirals are given. And also we can give interferons. Side effect of interferons is that it causes nausea and vomiting, fatigue, headache, etc. So it is not very much promoted, but yeah, it is a new treatment option, can be used easily, right? Now, also there are two more side effects of interferon. One is neutropenia. Other is thrombocytopenia. So these two very, difficult, very dangerous side effects are there of interferon. That's why there is a huge reluctance of using it. So this was about hepatitis B. Now let's talk about hepatitis C. Hepatitis C virus is also by blood and blood products, right? Acute infection of hepatitis C is asymptomatic, unlike hepatitis B, where they had a spectrum of symptoms. So acute is asymptomatic. More than 75% of patients who are infected with hepatitis C will progress to chronic stage, right? Rate of progression of hepatitis C virus, like when does the infection become chronic? It depends on the patient's immunity also. So it depends on patient comorbs, right? Then alcohol, then virus, then co-prevalence of HIV or HBV, co-infection. So all these things also makes a difference in the chronicity and the rate of progression of disease. It is one of the, according to Tintinelli, hepatitis C is one of the most common causes of HCC. it's important. One of the most common causes of hepatocellular carcinoma is hepatitis C virus, apart from hepatitis B virus, which we already know, right? So it is that dangerous. Like, it's not just chronic, it's dangerous, it's carcinogenic. Now, there are some direct acting antivirals which have been mentioned in Tintinales. So direct acting antivirals, these directly acts on hepatitis C, right? Cure is more than 95%. This is a very nice thing. So cure is more than 95% when patients are treated with direct acting antivirals. But the problem is that if a patient already has hepatitis B virus co-infection, right, then this hepatitis B virus can get reactivated. So if it is dormant, if hepatitis B is there already in a patient and it is dormant, then it has a very, very high chance of getting reactivated, and now the patient has both active hepatitis B and active hepatitis C. So it's very, very important in a patient with known hepatitis C positive status to rule out hepatitis B first and then be able to start direct acting antivirals, right? Now there is one more thing which is said here, that if you have a patient with hepatitis C virus, you start the patient on direct acting antivirals. Now what happens is that after 1 week or let's say 2 weeks, the patient presents to ER again, and this time the patient has symptoms of acute gastroenteritis, right? Acute vomiting, nausea, abdomen cramps, loose stool, etc., etc. This is a very huge red flag. Why? Because now the patient should get evaluated for hepatitis B virus again. So this is very, very important. It is said in Tintinales that if a patient is on direct acting antivirals and presents with acute GI illness during treatment, assessment for hepatitis B should be done. Now, hepatitis D. A done, A is done, B is done, C is done. Now hepatitis D. So hepatitis D is uncommon. We all know that it is a delta virus, right? So it is always in a co-infection with hepatitis B virus. Not very common, not very much important as per ER. It has a very high short-term mortality. Now, let's talk about when are LFTs deranged. LFTs are deranged in also CMV, cytomegalovirus, HSV, then Coxsackie and EBV, Epstein-Barr. So these are the 4 more viruses which can cause altered LFTs, right? What is the treatment for all of these? Again, supportive. Now, it's a long chapter. Acute toxic hepatitis. So acute hepatitis, I have told you that we have acute viral hepatitis and acute toxic hepatitis. We are done with acute viral hepatitis. Now we are going towards acute toxic hepatitis. Acute toxic hepatitis mein most common cause still remains paracetamol poisoning, paracetamol overdose, right? This is the most common cause. More than 40% of liver failure in the US occurs because of paracetamol overdose, right? Now, statins, atorvastatin, rosuvastatin, those statins which are important for decreasing LDL, these statins are commonly associated with hepatotoxicity. But significant hepatotoxicity is very rarely seen. So we do not know that what is the significance of statins in causing hepatotoxicity because it is not significant. Of course, an element is there, but it is not significant. Now there are some herbs which are mentioned in Tintinales. I'll just show you. Here it is. Common herbal medication associated with hepatic toxicity. See, I do not know according to us what is important, which one should we know, because I do not know. I just knew about Senna of all of these. So I'm not sure if I know out of these anyone. Senna, if you know. Senna. This one. This is a laxative, right? So this can cause acute hepatitis, acute cholestatic hepatitis, and acute liver failure. Apart from this, I was not very much, aware of. I'm not familiar with any of these. So just go through this once, maybe. You may be able to. Yeah, this noni juice also, I've heard of this. Noni juice. This is available. It is being branded. I've seen this somewhere. This is a health tonic. But see, it is causing subacute hepatic failure and acute hepatitis. So just once go through this. These are common herbal remedies which are associated with hepatotoxicity. So this is what we should know. Then what else is there? Why does this happen? Just a second. Yeah, apart from this, any other table? Yeah, let's go through this table also once. So what are the stages of hepatic incaf? Stage 1, 2, 3, 4. What is stage 1? General apathy. Like generally patient doesn't feel much, becomes neutral towards happiness or sadness, like apathy. General apathy is stage 1, I don't care. Stage 2 is lethargy, drowsiness, asterixis. Wants to sleep more. I'm going to sleep. 3 is stupor. 3 is stupor with hyperreflexia, extensor plantars, and 4th is coma. So this is the next table. We'll just read about it in chronic hepatitis. So yeah, we were in acute toxic hepatitis. Paracetamol is the most common one. Apart from that, statins. Now, alcoholic liver disease. This is also acute toxic hepatitis. So alcoholic liver disease, it is asymptomatic. Best part is it is reversible. It is reversible. Okay, so what happens is that reversible, first of all, earlier it is in the early initial stages, it is just simple fatty liver. But later it goes towards steatohepatitis and finally liver failure. See, cirrhosis, right? So what is mentioned is that if a patient takes 6 drinks, just a second, I'll just 6 drinks per day, 6 drinks per day, then it is going to induce alcohol related steatosis in more than 90% of the drinkers, right? Of which 30% of fatty liver, which is steatosis of course, 30% of fatty liver will progress to cirrhosis, right? Diagnosis of alcoholic liver disease gives 35% of 5-year survival, which means what? That if a patient at 40 years of age gets diagnosed with alcoholic liver disease, now the survival is going to be just 35% for the next 5 years. So 5-year survival rate is very low. Only 35% of such patients are going to survive for the next 5 years and 65% are going to die. Now, non-hepatic causes of toxic hepatitis. Then non-hepatic features, sorry, I'm so sorry. Non-hepatic features of alcohol-induced steatosis. We all know that thiamine deficiency causes neuropathy. So Glavin-Stocking neuropathy it is called. Distal neuropathy. Glavin-Stocking neuropathy. Apart from which, what is there? Malnutrition and cardiomyopathy. Malnutrition and cardiomyopathy. So these are the non-hepatic features of alcoholic associated liver disease, right? Also, we all know about Amanita poisoning. Amanita is a mushroom. So Amanita is a mushroom and its poisoning is very lethal. So this also comes in the spectrum of acute toxic hepatitis. What is the treatment of acute toxic hepatitis? Treatment is supportive. What is supportive? if a patient is very very sick, you start from ABCs. You give fluids, you give thiamine, you give all the multivitamins, you give all the, like if the patient is vomiting, you give drugs for that. If a patient is having other symptoms, pain, body pain and other things, then you do that. If a patient is diabetic and lands up in DK, you manage the DK. Then very important, whenever liver is affected, there is hypoglycemia, so we have to also keep an eye on the patient's sugar levels, treat hypoglycemia. If we already know that the cause of acute toxic hepatitis is paracetamol, then we initiate NAC, N-acetylcysteine therapy. I am about to record a video on that also. I've completed that chapter. So NAC, also other drugs and mushrooms. If the history has mushrooms and drugs, then also we can start NAC. If the history has paracetamol, then also we start NAC, right? N-acetylcysteine. So this was all about acute hepatitis. So let's just see once what we have read. Acute hepatitis was of two types: acute toxic hepatitis, acute viral hepatitis. Now we are going towards chronic hepatitis, after which we will be going towards fulminant hepatic failure. Hepatic failure, right? So chronic hepatitis, which also includes cirrhosis, right? So if a patient, like let's learn the pathophysiology, how it occurs, right? So patient remains asymptomatic for years altogether, right? The liver parenchyma is normal, right? Now what happens is that slowly there is damage that occurs. This damage will cause some damage to the liver parenchyma, and this liver parenchyma will turn to fibrotic tissue from the normal tissue. So what is going to happen over years? Liver parenchyma was 100% normal, now 90% normal, 10% fibrosed, 80% normal, 20% fibrosed, 70% normal, 30% fibrosed, and that is how slowly it gets progressed, right? Whenever we look at labs, there may be OTPT derangement slight, but we cannot make out because we've just read in this lecture, right? Like previous lecture, that slight OTPT is raised in diabetics also, in pregnancy also, in patients who are on some drugs also. So we cannot tell easily, but on ultrasound we can tell. On ultrasound they can tell fatty liver is there, grade 1, grade 2, grade 3. Whenever we do POCUS, we also need to understand that what is grade 1, what is grade 2, what is grade 3. The echogenicity matches diaphragm, or does it match, it's also interesting. We'll study that also. So on ultrasound it shows fatty liver. Then what happens after some time? What will happen? That a critical amount, they've not mentioned the amount, but critical amount of liver parenchyma will be replaced by fibrotic tissue. So now what happens, that in majority we do not have the liver parenchyma, in majority now we have the fibrotic tissue. So what is going to happen? This fibrotic tissue is not performing any function which is related to liver, right? So now this is going to cause all the problems. What are the problems? It may cause SBP, spontaneous bacterial peritonitis. It will cause abdominal pain. It is going to cause ascites. It is going to cause generalized weakness. It is going to cause altered mental status. In emergency, in ER, we do not care. We just do not care about chronic liver disease. What do we care about is the consequences, the sequelae. Like patient comes with upper GI bleed, which is melena, or patient comes with hematemesis, right? So these are maybe because of deranged INR. So this is a sequelae to chronic liver disease. We have to manage this. We have to manage this part, right? Patient comes altered. It is because patient is in hepatic INCAF. So whenever patient is in hepatic INCAF, we do not have to treat chronic liver disease. We have to treat hepatic INCAF. We have to treat this. We have to get rid of the nitrogenous wastes, right? So this is our work. In ER, we have to do all of this, right? Then ascites. If patient is having gross ascites, we have to go and do therapeutic tapping. Therapeutic tapping. This is what we have to do. If patient is Like if there is pleural effusion, reactionary pleural effusion is there, patient is in respiratory distress because of ascites, gross ascites, protuberant abdomen, then what we have to do, we have to do the tapping. So in ER, we are not looking for treatment of CLD. We are looking for the treatment of the acute symptoms which have occurred and which have to be treated on spot, right? Which can be life-threatening. So this is what we have to do. Ascites. Let's look at ascites. So what is ascites? Ascites is one of the hallmark of CLD. Protuberant abdomen, I told you right now. Protuberant abdomen. Diaphragm, this is the liver, right? Water everywhere. This was the diaphragm earlier. Now it gets displaced upwards. What happens is, because of diaphragm being displaced upwards, it causes respiratory distress. Excuse me. It causes respiratory distress. It causes respiratory distress, and also mostly towards the right side, which means the right lung. This is going to have sympathetic pleural effusion. Sympathetic pleural effusion. So what is sympathetic pleural effusion? It is when there is sterile fluid buildup. Sterile fluid buildup. We'll read more about it later. I think it's time right now. I need to leave. So we'll just read about it later. We'll have a part 4 also, because the chapter is really very long, right? So thank you very much.